Hey everybody, it's Ginger on Wheels here, as you know. Today we've got a scooter that doesn't blow. It's the Hiboy S2 Pro. Let's go. Welcome again everyone to another full and complete Ginger on Wheels review. You all remember that 9-Bot Max review I did, right? That was a great little scooter. Well, this Hiboy S2 Pro really gives that thing a run for the money. With the 9-Bot Max, Segway set out to make the perfect commuter scooter. Convenient, sleek, and user-friendly, but they did miss the mark in a few spots. However, where the 9-Bot Max is lacking, the Hiboy S2 Pro seems to shine. Since it's very clear to me that the design team at Hiboy was trying their best to compete with the 9-Bot Max, I'm going to review the S2 Pro and compare it to the 9-Bot Max along the way. I've divided this review up into sections, so if you're curious about just one part of the scooter, you can skip to that section now. Otherwise, buckle up and get ready for the full review. Okay, starting at the top, we've got the handlebars, which are 17 inches across. On the handlebars, we can see two grips, which are 4.5 inches wide and 1.5 inch in diameter, and they have a grippy textured pattern to them. Unlike a lot of other scooters, the grips on this thing are secured to the bar somehow. They do have about 1/32 of a rotation of play in them, but it's not possible to rotate them all the way around. There's nothing more annoying than having grips that slide around when I'm trying to ride. I do wish the bars were a little wider, but I think that's just my personal preference for aggressive and faster scooters. I can't really fault Hiboy for having bars this narrow, because most entry-level scooters do. And also, the wider the bars are, the harder it gets to transport or store the scooter discreetly. This scooter has two brakes, an electronic brake in the front, which has regenerative braking built into it, as well as an analog disc brake in the back. Both brakes will activate the brake light in the rear, as well as disengage the cruise control if you've got that locked on, but we'll get more into that later. The lever for the electronic brake is on the left side of the handlebars, and it has a red thumb pad, which makes it easier to distinguish from the throttle. The electronic brake isn't an on or off type brake. The dial will progressively increase the brake intensity the farther you pull it down, as it should. However, it's hard to come to an emergency stop using just the electronic brake, but that's okay. If you find yourself needing to stop quickly, you can pull the handbrake lever, which will activate the electronic brake and the rear disc brake simultaneously. It's very possible to lock up the rear tire with this brake, which makes it kind of fun to slide the rear end of the scooter around corners, which is something you can't do with the 9-Bot, but it also makes for a great emergency brake. Now, the advantage to having two brake levers is that if you want, you can ride around using just the regen electronic brake to save as much battery as possible. Now, I did do some acceleration and brake testing for this scooter in my minimum range test, and the scooter was able to stop from top speed in exactly 2.02 seconds, which is about half a second faster than the 9-Bot Max. Attached to the disc brake lever, you can see there's a little built-in bell, which sounds pretty fantastic and is easy to use. Just pull back the black lever and a built-in spring will ding the bell for you. At 12 inches away, the bell measures 65 decibels, where the bell for the 9-Bot Max measured 61 decibels. Slightly louder. Behind the disc brake lever, you'll see the thumb throttle assembly. Now, higher end scooters will usually have a trigger throttle, which I personally prefer, but this thumb activated throttle makes it easier for newer users to distinguish between the gas and the brakes. And some people might argue that it's more ergonomic too. If you've been a subscriber to the Ginger on Wheels channel for a while, then you know that I really like to test every device I get, and I usually ride them till they break. I tested the Hiboy S2 Pro for weeks with incrementally harder and harder rides until it finally broke. Now, what broke? It was the throttle spring. It might have been, and probably was, my fault, but I'll relay a little tip to you. If you're riding the scooter on extreme off-road terrain or jumping this thing off stairs or other crazy things, you should be conscious of how much downward force you apply to the throttle. I had it held down all the way when I jumped a set of stairs, and when I landed I exerted too much force on the throttle and it actually broke the spring mechanism inside the head unit. Now, for 99% of people using the scooter for simple transportation, this will never be an issue, but for some, it might be. The fix for the problem is to replace the entire handlebar assembly. Now, this is where things get really iffy for Hiboy. I want to put a huge asterisk next to the lifetime technical support claim that they make on their site. When I review scooters, I usually make an effort to communicate with the companies privately to get as many details as I can about the unit, but I also contact them anonymously for support so I can be sure that if something breaks, the support's there for my viewers when they need it. And this is where Hiboy failed miserably. If you're someone who doesn't have a lot of patience or free time, then you should definitely consider another scooter from another company. You can expect to wait days between replies from support, you can encounter broken promises, and experience general frustration. Even when Hiboy knew that it was me, a YouTuber reviewing the scooter to a large audience, they still failed to communicate anything within a reasonable window of time. At first they were alright, but as time went on they just seemed to ignore me. They even admitted later on that they knew their support was bad, and when I contacted them anonymously about a support question, they took 9 days to reply. Now for comparison, if you ask another scooter company like Voro Motors, Rev Rides, or eWheels a question, you can expect a detailed and thorough response in less than 48 hours, sometimes even the same day. But just because support is lacking doesn't mean the product is bad, so let's get on with the review. Okay, all that aside, let's look at the scooter display, which will show you your current speed mode, current moving speed in miles per hour or kilometers per hour, if your lights are on or off, as well as the remaining battery level, which reads 0 through 5 bars, so 20% increments. There's also a little icon that appears on the screen if cruise control is activated and engaged, and if you engage the locking feature in the app, the display will show a big letter P, which I'm guessing stands for parked. One of the coolest features of the display is that it has a little power input and output gauge, sort of like a power output gauge on a Prius. You can see green, yellow, and red bars, which represent the amount of power you're outputting, or if the regen brakes are in use, then how much regenerative power you're getting back. Should you somehow overheat the scooter, there's a little thermometer icon that will appear in red on the dash in the bottom left. The most used functions of the scooter can be activated with this little button on top of the dash. Push it once to turn on the scooter, and once the scooter is on, you can single push the button one more time to get the lights turned on or off. Spoiler alert, this scooter has pretty sweet underglow lights. You can also push the button twice quickly to switch between the speed modes, of which there are 2. There's a comfort mode with an out-of-the-box top speed of 14 miles per hour, and a sport mode with a top speed of 18 miles per hour with me, and 19 miles per hour free spin if the tires lifted off the ground. You can also push the button 3 times to turn the cruise control feature on or off without using the app. If you're riding with the cruise control feature turned on, you activate it by simply holding the throttle at the same speed for 7 seconds. You'll hear 2 short beeps, and then the scooter will remember exactly how fast you're going, until you hit either of the brakes. As if that isn't enough features to mess with, there's also a Hiboy app that you can download for free. The first time you open the app, it'll ask for a password, and the default password is 888888. That's 6 number 8s. Don't ask me why, but that is what it is. The password can be changed once you're inside the app. Once you enter the password, the app will quickly connect to the scooter anytime the scooter's on and the app is open on your phone. Watch how fast it connects. The range for Bluetooth connectivity to my phone was about 35 feet, which really isn't bad. It connects pretty fast, and I've never had a problem with the app not being able to find the scooter or getting randomly disconnected. Inside the app, there's an enlarged detailed speedometer, so if your phone's mounted to the handlebars, you can see the speed a little easier, but it also shows you a very accurate battery gauge. I tested a few different phone mounts, and I found one that I think works pretty well for this scooter, and I linked that in the description below. Like I said before, the app also allows you to lock and unlock the scooter, which will not only disengage the throttle, but it also uses the motor to lock the front tire in place, so people can't just hop on and push it away. Keep in mind though, it's still very possible to just pick up the scooter and throw it in the back of a truck or something though. Now, if you're looking for lock recommendations past the built-in locking feature, I've linked 2 locks that work well on this scooter, both with built-in 120 decibel alarms. Anyway, back to the app. You can use it to turn your lights on and off, switch speed modes, turn the cruise control on and off, and also get extremely accurate real-time data on your scooter, like controller temperature, remaining battery voltage, and the current amps and power usage. This is all pretty next-level stuff for a scooter in this price range. If you click the settings button in the app, you can adjust more detailed things, like if your scooter shows miles per hour or kilometers per hour, if you want to use kickstart or zero start, but there's also a secret Easter egg in here. If you click on advanced settings, you can adjust the acceleration and regen braking responsiveness. Overall, the app's pretty well done and offers way more settings and features than most people will ever really use. Okay, now moving down from the display, you can see this little hook on the back, which is used to lock the scooter into the folded position, but it also has an added bonus. You can hang grocery bags from it. This little grocery bag hook is something that 9bot Max owners have to pay a little extra for, so that's a cool bonus. Right below the hook, you'll see a red water-resistant cap, which is actually the charging port, and it's the only scooter I've seen with the port up top, and it sure makes it a lot easier to plug this thing in. You don't have to go fumbling around on the underside of the deck. Speaking of charging, it takes 6 hours to charge from 0 to 100%. You simply pop the end of the charger into the port, and if the light on the charger is red, it means your scooter is charging, and if it's green, then your charge cycle is complete. It's pretty straightforward stuff there. Speaking of straightforward, that's where the headlight points. The headlight's located at the top of the bars. You just push the button once while the scooter's on to activate the headlight. It's a good headlight for most situations, but if you're riding at night near the top speed, then I would definitely recommend a more powerful light, like the one I linked below, to improve your light's throw distance. Like I mentioned earlier, the scooter has sweet underglow lights as well, and they glow red in color, but they don't change color. They look really cool if you ask me, but some people might not like that look, and they might be disappointed to learn that you can't turn off the underglow lights without also turning off the headlight. So that would be a cool feature to add into the app for the next generation of this scooter. Coming down the stem, you'll see 4 small hex screws, and when you first get the scooter, the handlebars will be completely detached from the scooter, and it's up to you to put these screws in. If you add a dab of blue Loctite and get these screws really snug in, then you'll never have a problem with them coming loose while you ride. I actually didn't add Loctite to mine because I wanted to test the capabilities of this scooter out of the box, and mine never came loose. But they eventually come loose on every other scooter with similar designs, so I figure it's better to be safe than sorry here. Along the stem here, you'll see that the cables are encased inside and held in there with these little rubber grommets to keep the water out. The stem's pretty solid. It offers a deck to bar height of 39.5 inches, though it does have a small amount of flex to it, and that's actually one of my 2 small complaints with the scooter. Like I already said, I did actively try to brake the scooter, launching it off flights of stairs, going top speed off-road, hitting potholes, etc., and my stem didn't crack. But I have a feeling that for heavier riders, over time, this small amount of flex could lead to metal fatigue and a possible crack. The 9-Bot Max doesn't have this problem, as the stem tube is slightly thicker. This is pure speculation though, as my Hiboy stem never cracked, and I didn't see any instances of it happening online, but I still think it's something to take into consideration. When you're riding a scooter, you should never really crank back on the handlebars. You should do all the weight balancing and distribution with your feet if you can, to really only use the bars for steering if you can help it. And I think if you follow that general rule, the bars on this scooter will be totally fine. Now at the base of the stem, you'll see the folding mechanism, which is pretty straightforward and easy to use. You simply slide up this metal tab and pull the latch forward and the scooter will fold. With the bars at the back of the scooter, you pull up this metal piece on the fender and simply slide the grocery bag hook into the hole. Now your scooter is locked in the folded position and can be easily carried around. The scooter weighs 36 pounds, which is 6 pounds less than the 9-Bot Max, and it has a smaller profile too, so it might actually be better for sliding under your desk at work or bringing on the bus if you need to. Back to the latch though. Just like every other single scooter I've tested, the latch bolts will eventually need to be tightened and adjusted. Luckily, that's not too big of a pain on this scooter, and I made a quick video showing how you can tighten the latch, which I'll link above now. But this inconvenience does qualify as my second official complaint. I don't know how many generations of scooter it's going to take before manufacturers finally get the memo and make a solid, durable latch, but for heavier or more extreme riders like me, I can almost guarantee that this latch will need to be adjusted within the first 200 miles of use. Now, something cool about this scooter is that it has a 30-day money-back promise, along with a 12-month warranty on parts and that quote-unquote lifetime technical support, however abysmal it may be. Hiboy does eventually uphold the warranty, and it will ship parts for free if they break, but it could be weeks before you get them. If you own a 𝗧cie 9-Bot Max, then 𝗧cie actually requires that you ship the scooter back to the manufacturer for repairs, which can take weeks. 𝗧cie doesn't have brick and mortar service centers you can bring the scooter to yet, and it won't ship parts. At least that's how it was when I did my review a few months back, so the Hiboy wins by a very narrow margin in that regard. 𝗧cie is setting up service centers throughout the US as we speak though, so Hiboy won't have an edge there for very much longer. You might have read on the Hiboy website that these tires are 10 inches, and it's even printed on the tire. But I'm not sure where that number comes from though, because the tires are actually 9 inches in diameter. Maybe closer to 9.5, but still definitely not 10 inches. The tires are solid rubber too, not pneumatic. Now the 2 big complaints most people have with solid tires is that they're slick and they're rigid with little to no give. But Hiboy did actually make an effort to address these complaints. The solid tires on the S2 Pro have holes in the sidewalls to allow for some give under impact, and unlike other solid scooter tires I've tested, they have the same grippy rubber feel as pneumatic tires. To me, this is one of the bigger advantages of the scooter. The tires look and perform very similarly to pneumatic ones, but you can never get a flat and you never have to waste time pumping them up or checking your PSI. There's a tiny bit slipperier when it's actually wet out than pneumatic tires, but it's really only noticeable if you lock up the back tire or take a really sharp turn in the wet, which you should never be doing anyway. Now, the front tire is where the 350-watt hub motor lives. Thanks to the Hiboy app, I could see that on steep hills the motor's peak output's closer to 600 or 700 watts. The 9-Bot Max single motor claims to peak around 800 watts, but I didn't notice any significant decrease in hill climbing ability between the 2 scooters. It seemed about the same, and it's probably because the Hiboy S2 Pro weighs a little bit less. Like I said earlier, the S2 Pro has the ability to propel the scooter, along with my chunky ginger body, up to 18 miles per hour, which is the same exact speed as the 9-bot Max. Okay, moving from the front tire to the back, we get to the deck, which houses a 36 volt, 11.4 amp hour battery, and I'll link a video I did on range tests with the scooter above now. But long story short, I got about 22 miles of range in the comfort mode and 11 miles in the sport mode going full throttle the whole time. The comfort mode test was just about 5 miles shy of my eco range test for the 9-bot Max. In my opinion, the scooter beats the 9-bot Max in almost every category except for range, so if you really need that 5 miles of range, then keep in mind the 9-bot Max is 6 pounds heavier and costs over $200 more. I don't mean to sway your opinion at all, but if you're on the brink of buying this scooter and the review has convinced you that you want one, you can support the channel by using the code GingerOnWheels on the Hiboy website, which will get you an additional 5% off. Anyway, the usable deck space is about 17.5 inches long by 6 inches wide. It's a bit smaller than the 9-bot Max, but considering that I wear size 13 shoes, they're both equally small feeling to me. I do wish the deck were a bit bigger on both scooters. When you're seated on the Hiboy though, the limited deck space isn't that noticeable. Hold up though, that reminds me that this deck has one feature that very few scooters on the market actually have, the ability to mount a stock seat. That's right, as you saw in the intro, this scooter has an add-on seat option available, and it does cost a bit extra, but that officially makes it the first scooter I've ever tested with a seat. And in case you're wondering, I approve. You slide the seat into the post hole in the back and tighten this one size 6 hex screw, which will lock the seat into the deck. And at first I had the seat adjusted funky and I didn't like it very much. It takes a bit of getting used to. But, pro tip, if you tilt the seat slightly forward and you find the right ride height, it will distribute the weight evenly between your butt and your feet. It also has a little reflective piece on the back and is fully adjustable. Now the seat makes it so much easier to ride for long distances, and it also makes you stick out less on the trail. If you're standing on the scooter, you're about a foot taller than if you're seated. Honestly, seated riding is sort of a game changer. It makes the scooter ride feel much more relaxed overall, and also I imagine if you're riding the scooter to work and back with the seat, you'd feel much less fatigued when you got to the office. On the deck we also see a kickstand, which isn't quite as thick as the kickstand on the 9-bot Max, but in my experience it does just as good of a job of keeping the scooter upright. I wish the lip at the end of the kickstand were a little larger though, so that it'd be easier to flip down with your shoe, but that's still not terribly hard to do. Next to the kickstand, underneath the deck, the scooter has got something else that no other scooter in the price range has: dual spring rear suspension. The suspension isn't incredibly noticeable when you're standing on the scooter, but if you're seated, when most of your weight's near the back, you can definitely feel it helping out on bumps. There are a few things worse in this world than taking a full pothole to the butt cheeks. I had some people tell me in my unboxing video that the suspension was adjustable, but unless your brake cable's rubbing or squeaking, then Hiboy doesn't actually recommend adjusting the suspension. The rear suspension overall has about a ½ inch of travel, which is exactly a ½ inch more than you get with the 9-bot Max, which has no rear suspension at all. Well, all this brings us to our final aspect of the scooter, which is the rear fender. It's not a terrible fender, it does a decent job of keeping the water off the back of your jacket, but I do wish it were a little bit longer. At top speed on wet ground, the tire will still fling up a tiny bit of water, but not enough to get on your jacket. If the fender were just a couple inches longer, this wouldn't happen though. And the fender on the 9-bot Max does have these couple extra inches, but at a cost. The fender on the 9-bot Max isn't reinforced at all, and I've seen quite a few people now that have broken their fender off the 9-bot. But on the fender of this Hiboy S2 Pro, it's reinforced with these 2 metal stabilizers. You could accidentally stomp on this fender, and I'm pretty sure it wouldn't break off. I can tell Hiboy was taking notes off the 9-bot Max on this one. Also on the fender, you'll see the rear brake light and a metal hook for the folding mechanism. The brake light's turned on at all times when the headlight's on, and then it will blink when you push the brakes, but if the lights are off and you pull the brakes, then the light will stay on illuminated solid with no blinking. Well, I guess that about covers it for this scooter. Overall, I'd argue that unless you need that extra 5 miles of range or excellent support, then the Hiboy S2 Pro wins the battle between the 9-bot Max. It's lighter, stops faster, has more lights, more built-in app features, rear suspension, an option for a seat, and it's about $200 cheaper. Also, if you use the code GingerOnWheels when you check out on the Hiboy site, it's even cheaper, by 5%. With the slightly shorter handlebars, and the ability to limit the top speed and braking sensitivity in the 2 drive modes, I would also argue that the scooter is safer for kids too. I can see that Hiboy set out with a mission to put the 9-bot Max out of commission, and with the introduction of the S2 Pro, they might have done just that. I hope you guys enjoyed today's review of the Hiboy S2 Pro scooter. Make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel for more killer scooter reviews, and also check out gingeronwheels.com for any new scooter news and available discount codes. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all for the next video.